20th day of May 2024. I'm going to be your host tonight. You can call in at 709-589-4406. Things got shifted around on me. I hope you're having a great day. Here we go again. International Atomic Energy Agency. My goodness. What are we going to do with these maniacs? We got 4 people on the show. Oh, 5. It took a dozen years to get this many people. I shouldn't complain. It could be worse. Should the International Atomic Energy Agency be charged with crimes against humanity for hiding the Fukushima massive nuclear emissions? What do you think? Do you think they should be charged? You got 100% yes? And so obviously you agree. What are we going to do with these people? They should be charged with crimes against humanity. And they should get, this is a omnicide we're talking about. They're actually killing everything now with radiation from Fukushima as the tipping point, right? It's the straw that broke humanity's back. It's an extinction level event. And now they're saying nothing got out on tritium. It's just almost too much to bear. Tritium levels in the 6th batch, so they're claiming there's only 6. There's actually 4,816 batches, if you call a 24-hour release a batch, that is. It's hemorrhaging out of this site. This site, to suggest that nothing got out of the site until August 24th last year. If that's not the craziest statement you ever heard, what actually is, I wonder? Okay, I'm just, work with me here. Come on, bear with me. So nothing got out of the building to your left, and it looks like this at the very top of it. I mean, they're journalists, Dana. Who are you going to believe? You're going to believe Dana Durnford, or are you going to believe actual journalists? I don't know. It's up to you. Reactor 3 blew up, by the way. Plumes covered the whole planet in about 25 days. Does the truth matter at all anywhere on this planet? That's the stump that remains. Now, the fuel pools were at the top of the building. So nothing got out of these buildings. So I'm totally friggin' confused. I don't know how to digest that. I don't know how to wrap my mind around a statement that says nothing got out of the buildings. I'm busted up here today, so I'm probably going to be pretty sluggish. Actually, I got a tendency to be a bit lively when I'm busted up. I got some pictures and videos for everybody at the end of this tonight. Been working on the trailer. On Thursday, I was too busted up. Friday, same thing. Saturday, I couldn't do anything. I was too busted up. Yesterday, I went for it again. And today, I finished. And we're going to show you pictures from all that nightmarish stuff. But that was the better way to do it. Just get it done, right? I gotta go to the city tomorrow and pick up fenders for the trailer. Because I can't, here where I'm to, you can't drive a trailer or use a trailer without fenders. And they're on sale for $50 each as of today. And so we gotta hit it tomorrow morning. The level will all be gone, right? And that's okay. So that's what took up to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And today, right? It's a good day today because we got everything put together and we got good pictures. All right, so back to the story because we're going to use that for anybody who's not familiar. We're using a trailer to research rivers and streams and estuaries and lakes and stuff like that, fresh water. And I got a $600 microscope. And I got probably 600 bottles, and I probably got 500 little slides. None of them been used. So we're going to take samples and stick it under the slide. And the slide plugs into my USB, so I can transfer pictures directly. I can actually sit here and do it live while we're talking if I want to, right? And so that's going to be really interesting to see. I'm terrified of it, but let's go back to this story for time being. We're doing this because of Fukushima, obviously, right? So back to Fukushima. Will somebody please explain to me how nothing got out? How nothing got out of these buildings? Anybody? The International Atomic Energy Agency, we'd like them to call in and explain to us how nothing got out of these reactors. How this is reactor 3 and reactor 4. How is it nothing got out of those buildings? Because that's the official story, right? Nothing got out. The media said nothing got out, Dana. The media wouldn't lie to you. They're claiming they're at the top of the building to your left, 140 feet above the stump you see to your left, which is reactor 4. How is it that nothing got out of there? Can anybody explain to me? Because I'm having a hard time comprehending it. How could nothing get out of these reactors? Now, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, right? So with 30 million one-ton bags, with the buildings actually blown up, I mean, blew up. That explosion was felt 25 miles away. And so nothing got out of that, only tritium. But don't worry, that's all in the tanks. And they're mixing that with seawater, they said, and diluting it. I like to drown everybody at the International Atomic Energy Agency in one of those tanks. Only thing is, you're not going to get me to Fukushima. That's a lethal dose everywhere. But these are nut jobs, right? The International Atomic Energy Agency. They're the definition of tubble. So there was pictures. Let's go back to 2021, the 10th anniversary, the year of the 10th anniversary, rather. And in January, the end of January that year, 736 pictures were released unceremoniously, and they were up at TEPCO's website, but nobody acknowledged it. I found it on a Chinese site on a story about Fukushima, and I had translated the story because it was in Cantonese or something. And I still couldn't make any sense of it. And so anyway, they had all these links below it, which was linking directly to TEPCO's website. So it was a drone, very high quality, in 2000, just after the accident, that first couple of weeks or something. And there were 736. And I had done an updated version of that this year, in 2024. It's on my website here. And when I zoomed in, I started realizing everything was pixelated for the reactors, but also the common spent fuel pool. This is the common spent fuel pool right here, and it's completely redacted / pixelated. And so when I zoomed in, the top corner up there is reactor 1, the next one is reactor 2, that's reactor 3, and reactor 4 is on that side. You only see the side of it, right? So that's reactor 4 up there, and this is the common spent fuel pool, which is on the same level. So why was that pixelated, redacted? So behind, this is reactor 4. Behind that, directly behind it, because that's reactor 4 up there, and then straight down here is the the common spent fuel pool. So they're on the same road as reactor 4, reactor 3, reactor 2, reactor 1, and the common spent fuel pool. They're at the same height. So the tsunami ran through all of them, right? So this is Fukushima. So that meant that this is what happened to the common spent fuel pool too, and the dry storage cast, and reactor 5 and 6. So when you look at reactor 4, the reactor core and the spent fuel pools at the very top of these very large buildings. These are 190 foot, 65 meter, 19-story buildings. And this is at the same height. So the tsunami ran right through the common spent fuel pool. Now the reason those reactors melted down was because there was no electricity, which means there was no electricity for the common spent fuel pool, which had 4 decades of mixed reactor cores from 6 reactors in it. Now the damage, you can see the tsunami damage over there is a typical part of that coastline, which is around 1,200 miles. And the red are people fatalities, and the yellow is the numbers of people that were missing from those areas. And so significant damage, right? So Fukushima Daiichi is right here. And here's what the tsunami looked like at Fukushima Daiichi. You can, and now we've seen people out there saying there was only a few inches of water ran through Fukushima. The industry has just millions of people out there, like all the journalists, all the academics, all the pro-nuclear communities. There's 9,000 facets to nuclear. Are out there claiming there was no adverse events, right? But no nuclear scientists have went to Fukushima. You can actually see, this is reactor 3 ejection. Now that building is 19 stories, 190 feet, almost 200 feet tall, 20-story building, 65 meters or so. That's the reactor core and the fuel pool falling back down to Earth. That's why you see headlines like this: send us people who don't mind dying. And so this is a common spent fuel pool. Nobody's ever, and I mean ever, showed you that picture besides me. I'm it. And so that's pretty humiliating, right? That I'm the only person that showed you that picture, and I say, what's up? Like, what's up with that? I gotta admit, I'm so happy to have the trailer done. I almost never done a show tonight, but around 7:30 or 8 o'clock or so, I started to come around, and I said, well, I'll do a little show, right? And if I can last longer, I'll last longer, but at least I get back on the horsey again. Because like when you're using all the muscles, I'll show you that in the pictures later. So up there is reactor 6. And just down here was the dry cask storage. And see these tanks here? They're at the same level as the dry cask storage. So that was swept away to the dry cask storage. So reactor 6 is right there. The pump house is right here. And the tall stack is right there. So why was all that redacted? Now we have headlines suggesting there was some serious damage to reactor 6 and to reactor 5. But reactor 6 is completely redacted. So that was quite a surprise. We've never seen these pictures before. And there was no explanations of why they released it at the 10th year. And there was, when you look at it, there's no incentive for them to release these pictures because now you got more questions than answers, right? But we're glad they were released. And if you go back to my original video about this, I put links to these pictures. You can download them yourself. So this this spot right here is a unique looking, right? That's very unique. But above it, you can see everything is redacted. And that was up there. So these pictures that were released, I'm just going to move myself over and show you where that was too, because it's not there anymore. That's right here. Right, so this piece right here is going to show up right there. Look at the farmer fields alongside my elbow, right there. Dirty bastards. And you can see the top of the picture up there, farm fields. All nuclear disease factories are surrounded by farmers' fields. We're killing it tonight. We got 16 people on my show. How is that even possible? That's amazing. Where did all these people come from? I think it's a conspiracy. There can't possibly be 15 people watching my show. Why would anybody want to watch my show for? That's a joke, by the way. So why was this section completely pixelated out? And what was interesting was the pictures they released. That's just we went back in the time machine, got pictures of the act before when the accident originally happened. And so the yellow was the markers, the red is a major marker. And I'm just bear with me. Okay, so now this is headed towards the ocean that way. So the pictures they released to these redacted places that are pixelated, they drew a picture, they drew a line. See how the picture's going right towards the ocean. Watch this. It goes right down to that's the common spin fuel pool. So, and it was only this little short section, but you had to zoom in to actually understand that was happening. So somebody was trying to warn us at TEPCO and sneak these pictures out there. And if TEPCO pulled the pictures, I guess it would have raised a lot of controversies. Okay, so then it does there was another set of pictures, because there was a set of pictures drawing you a line from out, and then there was another set drawing you a line in. Right? So watch this. So it draws a line straight in, the drone, right? But this section of pictures to that redacted area, which is up in the red up there. And that's where the pictures stop. And then they draw you a line to reactor 6 the same way. So they were trying to warn us about these areas. And the yellow was markers that I used to work out exactly where that was on the site, because these are big sites, right? And we still don't know exactly what was there, but we know where it's to. And these were markers that I was using, like that shape over there was one of the markers, and these two buildings was another one, right? And so what you're looking at up right there is the dry storage shed. And so that's at sea level, basically, slightly above sea level. So the tsunami ran right through that. And we got a lot of pictures. There was 1,900 pictures released, and some of us showed behind there. And there are some casts still there, but obviously some got washed out to sea. And these are 50 tons or something, right? 100,000 pound containers. And so you see that, you can see those tanks up there, and that's reactor 5 and 6, the top center. So it draws a line also down to reactor 6. And when you zoomed in, you realize it's pixelated. So the picture is released, even though, because you're looking at the zoomed in versions, right? But yeah, somebody was trying to warn you about reactor 6 and another spot east and the common spin fuel pole. Did I mention the buildings blew up but nothing got out, according to Japan? So currently, I don't know if I highlighted it or something. Yeah, right there. So that's the section today, what it looks like. It's totally different, which was east. And so this section right here, I'm going to draw a square myself, didn't exist, right? And I showed you that stuff earlier. And this blue section was the section that was pixelated. And our markers now are filled up with tanks. The tanks are there to manipulate you. You can't fill these tanks up with radiation with water you're pouring over the fuel, because you'll start a chain reaction in the tank, first off. And second off, the tanks are going to be 1.4 million sieverts just of beta. And so imagine when you add in the gammas, the alphas, the neutrons. Because if you fill a tank up, because they had no filtration system, and we covered that extensively. In fact, the last video, I covered it pretty extensive again, right? So the last video is really important to understand the tanks and the water filtration system. And so that's that word section today. I do believe it's a gate area. But remember, there's a big, huge area that was pixelated. It wasn't just... That's now the new gate section where there's a cover. I believe that's what that is. So when you look at these buildings, I want somebody to explain to me, I want a pro-nuclear to call in and to explain to me how nothing got out of that building. Anybody? Any pro-nuclear out there? I'm in Canada. Let's keep her going here. Okay, so officially nothing got out, but unofficially everything got out, right? And so this is a genocide. Radiation levels on the U.S. West Coast, this is the French government, spiked a million times normal. There's 1 to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And so that's holy shit stuff. That's like, oh my God. Now that model you're looking at is based till the 18th of March 2011. So it's based on 7 days after the tsunami and 2 days after the last reactor detonated. Now they detonated a week later too, right? But the original detonations is what I'm talking about. So this is the IRS, and this is the same. This is the government, International Radiation Safety. So this plume model is based on 30 days. Now right here is 20 days in. So that's 20 days of radioactive fallout at 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air covering the entire planet. And cesium pulses energy almost at the speed of light, 600 feet every second. So you have an invisible plume. Think of a snowstorm that covers the planet. So think of this as a snowstorm from Japan. Snowstorm starts in Japan. And we're at day 10 of the snowstorm. It never stops snowing. The snow never melts, and the snow never goes away, and it never stops snowing. And so when you get up to around 31 days, and it's going to go on for a couple of million years like this, it's never going to stop coming out. The whole country, now the whole planet is radiated. And everything this stuff touches, it irradiates. So this stuff lands on leaves and that, and the leaves fall down, and any litter on the floor that's not already irradiated from the nuclear industry will become irradiated. And so if you take a magnet and you put it in a container of nuts and bolts and screws and washers and leave it there for a month and come back and pick it up, and you'll get a big string of nuts and washers. They're all clinging to each other, right? Well, radiation does the same thing, except it's really dangerous, whereas magnetic is not so bad. But with radiation, everything with replicating cells is vulnerable to it, and nothing has not only been triggered to defend against it. All right, we're getting there. Fukushima reactor leak was plugged with liquid glass. You think that was plugged with liquid glass? On April 6, 2011, so that's 3 weeks later. So 3 weeks later, now this picture was available 3 weeks later, by the way. 3 weeks later, the media, officials at the nuclear power plant in Japan announced that radiation contamination water was no longer leaking. Does that look like it's leaking to anybody? Out of the damaged reactors there and trickling, does anybody think that's going to trickle, editor? Does anybody think that's reactor 3 detonation? Does those plumes look like they trickled out? You got to wake up. You got to get informed, and you can't be sitting in silence any longer. This is not acceptable. It's time. It's time to hold this industry accountable, and it's up to you. Officials at the Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan announced that the radiation-contaminated water was no longer leaking out of the damaged reactor and trickling into the ocean. Workers managed to plug the leak, they said, with a mixture of sawdust and newspaper. Oh, thank goodness for science is all I can say. That's pretty amazing. They plugged that leak there with newspaper and sawdust. That's pretty clever, isn't it? Man, that's a nuclear meltdown, too. That's amazing they can do that. Photos, new images from Fukushima Daiichi press tour, February 11, 2013. The images were released by the press pool and showed the current condition of Fukushima Daiichi. And there was also some flyover shots to show the extent of the expansion around the plant of tanks and other storage. This is 2013. So this is the ALPS system in February 11, 2013. So let's go ahead to August the 9th, 2014. So you still got September, October, November, and December left. So in August the 9th, 2014, 3.5 years later, after the nuclear meltdowns, 3.5 years after the nuclear meltdowns, 3.5 years, just announced recently they think they finally have the ALPS system operational, which is supposed to be the water filtration system. But remember, all the atoms, and that was August 9, 2014, right? Remember, reactor 1 blew up. Reactor unit 3 blew up. Reactor 4 actually blew up. We don't have footage of it, but you have to take my words on it. It blew up. They're not in reactor 4. And this is all orchestrated by the International Atomic Energy Agency. The Washington Post closing the reactors causing a mess after non-catastrophic Fukushima crisis. Washington Post. 2013, November, they're claiming they're at the top of a building that doesn't even exist. And this is TEPCO's, or CNN. This is, they're linked, photo by TEPCO Electric Power Company. So, like, they're not telling a big lie. They're not pretending they're in a building that don't exist because this is like a banana or a potato chip or walking in sunshine or flying on an airplane. Okay. All right. Okie dokie. Here we go. All right, so now, August the 9th, 2014, they were hoping the ALPS system was working by the end of the year, by the end of 2014 / summer 2015. All right, so I'm going to play this clip, which is the BBC in 2000 and fall 2000. And yes, I'm aware that Rupert Winfield Hayes, which is going to be the guy doing the story we're going to play in a second, is pretending he's in the fuel pooler reactor 4. But this is the same guy now is going to be talking. So get your birth bags there. But this is really important. So it's really important. So thank goodness we got 18, 19 people on our show. That makes me feel much better.
The Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
Magic, ooh. So all the tanks were full in 2013. And not from pumping water over the reactors, but from water had gathered up in the aquifers beneath the buildings, beneath the site. All right, so that's reactor 4 you're looking at. Well, it was. So what you're looking at is, where my finger is to, does that look like it's 190 feet in the air? Because that's important. So they built this contraption off-site and assembled it there, and then they pretended they were getting fuel out of the pool. And so this, where my finger is, that's what's left of reactor 4. So you can see how tall these people are. Now, but what you got to take into consideration is that whole piece of the building is missing also. This structure doesn't physically touch the building because it's obviously too fragile. And now you can see that it's all the way down to where my finger is. You have to assume that's the top of the building right here. So does, where my finger is to, does that look like it's 190 feet tall? I'm going to assume you're saying no. That's the correct answer. All right. Here we go. How long did that take us? That was only 36 minutes. Laid a foundation. We're only covering one story tonight, this story here. Okay. All right. Yabba dabba doo. But hang on, there's a but here. So on Wednesday's show, we covered this story. Towards a better understanding of the ALPS treated water from Fukushima. And that's supposed to be the mixing area where they're going to mix huge pumps to mix the tritium water. Because nothing got out, only tritium. That's the official story, despite the fact that everything got out. From 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools. Each fuel pool got 4 decades of reactor cores. And you might think nuclear is really difficult to understand if you're not familiar, but it's not. As for the second claim, it should be noticed that the ALPS treated water meets the standards defining the International Commission Radiological Protection, which is the IAEA's evil twin / United Nations subsidy. And as far as the contents of the liquids are the same, so there's no legal basis to distinguish the liquid produced by the nuclear accident from that produced in normal operations of a nuclear power plant. So they're saying the stuff from the nuclear meltdown meets the same criteria as normal operation because of the so-called ALPS system. So this is insanity, right? And we have to fight with every fiber in our body against this kind of evil. So now they're saying the tritium, but what I showed you earlier is obviously a different story, right? The tanks were all full in 2013. And if you're not familiar, go back to my last show and we show you more detail about what was in the tanks and the tanks themselves. The tanks are empty. Everything's going directly into the ocean because the numbers we're talking... First off, like an ALPS system, the Arriva system was just like the ALPS, was the French. The Siri system, the Korean systems, these were meant to lull you into complacency that the nuclear industry was on top of it, right? It's simply, they don't even go to the site. The reactors actually detonated and threw 4 decades of reactor fuel pellets all over the site. You couldn't get a nuclear scientist to go there. If you tried to drag them there, they would chew their arm off. The tritium concentration in the 6, so now they're saying there's been 6 releases. So 2013, the ALPS system didn't even exist, right? In 2014, in the end of it still didn't exist. Now, like the Arriva system was never switched on. It was built because it was waiting for you to stop paying attention, and you did, right? Because, the nuclear scientists got it under control. So this is a very short video that I made this clip 10 years ago, 2013. And this is just a fraction of the media that are saying that they're at the top of the stump to your left.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Okay, so this is important because now remember we were talking about how high was reactor 4. Oh, goodness me. Bear with me. Yeah, the problem with the equipment I'm using, it's not very easy. Okay, so because this is before they put the cover over it. But when you seen the picture, you seen it from the other side where you were basically looking at that height, right? So now when you look at this building now, you're seeing all the way down here. So this is the top of the building left. I'm sorry. This is 190 feet tall right there, look. But it's not, obviously, right? So the 190, what I'm trying to say is the 190-foot building is gone. It's completely gone. And that should have been razed to the ground, but they left it there so they can put a stump over it, this contraption they put over it. This contraption they put over it. Just bear with me. So they're saying there's only 6 releases from a building that no longer exists. And none of the releases happened on... Nothing got out of there ever. And what they released started on August the 24th of last year. Right, that's the official story. Now, that they told us, the people who, there's just a small fraction, right, of the world that's evil. And that's the nuclear industry seems to be behind an enormous amount of evil. And the International Atomic Energy Agency seems to be the coordinator of evil. A monstrous betrayal, and it's simply not tolerable. And they don't have a right to kill our planet. They don't have a right to destroy all the precious resources. And everybody should be trying to protect water. We can't survive without water. We owe our existence to water. Our parents couldn't exist if there was no water. We owe our existence to water. And the future owe their existence to water. Water has more rights than we do. We are supposed to protect water. Water is our most precious, our most important, our most coveted, and is an absolute... It's life. Without water, we have no life on this planet. Yeah, maybe we might have single cells or something like that. Oh, no, I got single cells, Dana. Hey, shut up, okay? Just shut up. Without water, there is no life. Bear with me. I'm getting there. Somewhere over the rainbow. Da, da, da. Nothing got out of there, but they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. Picked up this from the news. Farmers are harvesting rice in one of the paddies in Fukushima Prefecture, 2016. How the hell did I end up over there, I wonder? And so, just to get people's attention, I blew this picture out of proportion, right? Turned it into a little video with zombies, the whole nine yards. So they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, but nothing got out until August the 24th, 2023. That's the official story. They can't get rid of the sewage in Japan? You can't get rid of the ash from the incinerators because it's too radioactive. You can't get rid of the water intake for the communities, the sediment from the water filtration. It's so radioactive. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of one-ton bags. I got another way to tell the story, maybe. The rain... Now, nothing got out of the buildings, so everything I'm telling you can't be true. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the media show, they're at the top of the building, Dana. Nothing got out, Dana. You really think, Dana, they're going to pretend they're on top of a building that don't exist?
Is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown.
Right, but that's the guy who earlier told you all the tanks were full in 2013, right? That's the same guy, Rupert Winfield Hayes, up in the top right-hand corner. How can you pick up 60 million one-ton bags? How can you have rainfall? And the numbers were talking about 29,250,000 atoms per kilogram. So the BQ is a becquerel. A becquerel is a pulse of energy. It's almost at the speed of light. So gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas pulse energy almost at the speed of light. Now, one of them, I can't remember which one because it's not important. One of them slightly slower than the other three. They're all almost the speed of light. But does it matter? Once you get over 100,000 miles per second, does it really matter anymore if one's slower or not? But the problem is it's energy. And cesium, of course, pulses energy 600 feet every second. So, this is November 28, 2011. So I'm very confused. How can nothing got out of the plant, but they picked up 30 million one-ton bags? Can anybody explain that one to me? The International Atomic Energy Agency, now 29,250,000 atoms per kilogram pulsing energy in a becquerel every second. It's not like there's only one becquerel. It pulses a becquerel every second, who knows, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, or millions and billions of years in some cases. And anything that's anthropogenic man-made has incredible energy. If it has, like, say, plutonium-239 with a 240,000-year lifespan, 24,000-year half-life. And so it's very confusing because there's 10 half-lives. So typically when you say there's a half-life, you think of half, right? But no, the industry doesn't want to explain to you that there's actually 10 half-lives. So 24,000 years now is 240,000 years. But a problem also is it decays to another isotope, which doesn't mean that could be around for a billion years. And there's going to be 10 different decays. And then science actually says that even though they consider it benign when it gets to a certain decay, it's not. It's not innocuous or benign or harmless to larvae from insects and bacteria and fungus, which without bacteria and fungus, guess what? You can't have a future. So 29 million, these are numbers we've never heard tell of before. We've never heard tell of numbers like that. This supersedes, the nuclear wars they had to call nuclear testing. This was an event. We had an event. And for the West Coast, immediately, the research expeditions we've done for 6 years clearly show it's an extinction level event. The International Atomic Energy Agency admitted there's no such thing as a safe level of radiation. They must have had to burn them with a branding iron to get them to say that. And that the allowable standards for radiation are based on natural, not man-made. So can you wrap your mind around that statement? The allowable radiation standards are based on bananas, not on fuel rods and nuclear reactors and nuclear uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, to thousands of fission products, their daughters. So the International Atomic, not only are they saying nothing out of the buildings, their standards are not even based on anthropogenic man-made radiation. So we're in real trouble. We have to go to war. You got to go to war. And it's an information war. And you can do it without any big sweat. You can share this stuff. I'm used to being a scapegoat anyway after all these years, so you can share this stuff anywhere. Everything I do is copyright free. Everything on my website, which is over 10 years old, is copyright free. A single plutonium on the lung could cause a tumor. Not could cause, will cause a tumor. But we know from the dog studies that all the dogs died when exposed to plutonium in about five and a half years. But they usually had 3 tumors inside of them. But the biggest cause of death, let me bring it up, I suppose. The biggest cause of death from plutonium, I'll bring the study up actually, because that if I don't, then I might regret it later. So why regret when you can just go ahead and now the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rods is not iodines. Here we go. Toxicity of inhaled plutonium beagle dog, beagle puppies. 144 beagle dogs. And tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver occurred beginning about 3 years after exposure. The skeleton tumors were found in 93 dogs, were the most common cause of death. And for children, of course, you're mutating all their stem cells when it goes in the bones, right? Because they're developing. Same thing for small animals, mammals, and insects, where they're developing. So this is a death sentence for the species. This is why we call it an extinction level event. From the research expeditions, clearly show this is an extinction level event. Liver tumors, which were found in 20 dogs but were the cause of death in only 2 dogs, occurred later than the tumors in the bones and lungs. And the tumors in these 3 organs often occurred in the same animal, were competing causes of death. And so now this statement here, these findings in dogs and puppies suggest that the similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans accidentally exposed to uranium or plutonium-238. Now the problem with that is there's another study in plutonium experiment recall, 1976. It was discovered that human kidneys are at least, if not a lot more, 50 times less efficient than an animal's kidneys are at removing the plutonium. So an animal is at least 50 times, not 50%, but 50 times more efficient than a human kidneys is at removing plutonium. But now, the reactors of Fukushima, the total sum could be around 240,000 pounds of plutonium was released into the environment. And a lot of people smarter than me have acknowledged that 2 pounds released, dispersed into the ecosystem, into the atmosphere, and distributed worldwide is enough to poison everything on the planet. So 240,000 pounds of plutonium, I wonder. Now, plutonium is pretty rough, right? But the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods is curium isotopes. And don't worry about the alpha emitting fact of it. Just worry about the fact that it's the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods. Because when you think of it as only alpha, people got a tendency to try to mitigate it now, right? But it's the biggest byproduct of alphas, gammas, neutrons, and betas. No matter what, this is the biggest byproduct is the curium isotopes. Now the curium isotopes, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for the plutonium isotopes. And so curium isotopes do 20 times more damage than this study here about plutonium. It's kind of important, right? The IAEA says there's no such thing as a safe level, but that their standards are based on natural, not man-made. How is that even possible? And who the fuck are these people anyway? They're not elected. They're not appointed. They're a corporation known as United Nations. It used to be called the League of Nations, which is probably still should be. A League of Evil Nations. Inhaling just one hot particle can cause a cancer. So when you pick up 30 million one-ton bags, and you know, you're talking about 2,200 pounds, you're talking about 1,000 kilograms per bag, and a kilogram typically would have at least 100,000 atoms in it. And you picked up 30 million one-ton of bags, of these Fukushima bags. So 30 million, let me show you some more supporting evidence for that. Because the world, we live in a strange world, right, where people will look for like a Freudian slip or something, and subconsciously that'll get used to justify not acknowledging the severity, the significance, and the urgency of this story, right? This event. This is an event. Okay, here we go again. Just going to bring you some supporting evidence for the 30 million one-ton bags. So you can go read it yourself maybe or something. And remember, the grown food in the nuclear wasteland, this is abandoned. This is a Kuma. This is abandoned for the entire time, 13 years. They're actually harvesting food right alongside the one-ton bags of radiation. Now, this is sponsored by the government. And then they're shipping that worldwide. Like, it's pre-Fukushima. If Hollywood put out a movie about this, it would have got the lowest ratings possible, because it was just no way the nuclear industry would ever do something like that. Now they do it everywhere. And your health, and your children's health, your friends, your families, your loved ones, all the species are dependent upon you. It's your voice. All the species don't have a voice, right? So Fukushima contaminated soil in 2019. They had put the bags together. There are currently 105,000 sites. But remember, nothing got out. But Dana, there's 105,000 sites full of one-ton bags. Yeah, but nothing got out. That's the official story, right? Nothing got out. Okay, so go read this story too. Plane passed a parcel with Fukushima, March the 7th, 2016. Officials at the Ministry of Environment says up to 30 million tons of radioactive waste will eventually be moved to yet another third-level interim storage facility near the crippled 30 million tons. And these bags are 1 ton each, right? 30 million tons. But who knows how many these bags that they didn't pick up that they actually just dumped in rivers and estuaries and into the ocean, right? And we've got tons of documentation. Now, also the 30 million 1 ton bags, they deteriorate after 3 years. And so meaning the waste has to be repackaged. But first off, you can't repackage this stuff. 276,000 atoms a kilogram in Tokyo. But we're like, what about, like, you see radioactive plants now growing out of these 1 ton bags, right? They deteriorate quite quickly. The bags were about you thinking they got it under control. And I mean, 30 million 1 ton bags, they're allegedly scraping up the top 2 centimeters. Not 2 inches, but the top 2 centimeters of topsoil. And we know the radiation gets assimilated into plants, right, immediately. It's like the atoms are so small you can't filter it out. All the atoms are the same size, whether it's atoms from dirt or rocks or water or trees or me or you or whatever, right? They're all the same size. So you can't filter out cesium, you can't filter out uranium, you can't filter out plutonium, it just can't be done. You have to filter not filter, but you have to collect everything and keep it permanently. Because you can't filter it, see? And 276,000 atoms. Now, an evacuation zone at a nuclear plant pre-Fukushima was 185 atoms / Becquerels, which is a decay every second, almost at the speed of light. Very dangerous stuff. So 185, you normally would abandon that part of your plant. That was considered an evacuation zone. 276,000, it's unconscionable. It's unprecedented. And so they decided just to cover it up, because the average person thinks of Spider-Man, been propagandized by the Hulk and Spider-Man and other entities, fictional caricatures created by the industry, specifically to do that. The Homer Simpsons and the list goes. It's a very long list of these caricatures, cartoons. So once your drinking water is contaminated, your drinking water is permanently. Your pipes are contaminated. Your washing machines are contaminated. Your dishwashers, your dishes, your your sinks, your toothbrushes are contaminated. You hear me? You feel me? Your laundry is contaminated. You're contaminated. And Tokyo area soil testing finds radioactivity at Chernobyl relocation levels at 1 million atoms per kilogram. But a relocation for the nuclear plant used to be 185, not 919,000 pre-Fukushima. The whole story is crazy because they also only acknowledge cesium for the majority of it. Government said not interfere in Tokyo, New York Times, October the 15th, 2011. Then came the test result, 1.5 million atoms per kilogram per square meter, which is 66 divided by 66 to get a kilogram. So before Fukushima, 100 kilograms of cesium is nuclear waste, and after 100 atoms is safe to eat. Now, again, you see the word cesium, and this is how the International Atomic Energy Agency has instructed them to lie. People in Tokyo, the black substance, which is fungus, and some fungus will aggregate radiation. So how are you going to measure the atoms if they're all the same? Well, natural atoms don't pulse energy at the speed of light every second. Only man-made stuff does. And yes, they don't measure. In fact, some of the experts have said whatever measurement you're getting on your Geiger counter, you should multiply it by 600 to get the true number in your environment of the anthropogenic man-made radiation. And I agree wholeheartedly with that statement. People in Tokyo, the black substance is here. It's on the roof, on the asphalt and concrete. And this stuff could get many millions of atoms per kilogram aggregated of radiation. Radioactive dust reported in Tokyo after the fog at 4,000 atoms a kilogram of cesium, and the contamination never disappears. So seriously, you should have been abandoned. Well, Tokyo, with 36 million people in metropolitan Tokyo. So they picked up in the field, but they didn't pick up in the forest. So there's only 3% of the land where they picked up the 30 million one-ton bags. So you have a big party at your house. You come home, your kids had a big party. 2,000 people at your house, out in your garden, and on the street corner. And they partied. You were on vacation for 10 days, and they partied for 10 days, and they partied. And so you come home, they cleaned up 3% of the house. Would you notice they had a party? Yes, because 97% of the house is destroyed, right? But with radiation, you can't perceive it. You can't smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it. You can't perceive it, right? But it's brutal on the human. Brutal and unbelievably brutal on your children. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 atoms a kilogram. So you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. So how difficult or how hard is it to identify that in your cereal, your child's drinking water, your child's toothpaste, your child's shampoo, etc., right? Irreversible heart damage for children. So when you see a headline with 50,000, not 50 atoms, but 50,000 atoms of cesium in the soil near Tokyo, that's per kilogram. So you want to do a mathematical equation, and I'll show you how to do it here. So 50,000. 50,000. Multiply it by 66.6 to get a square meter. So 3.3 million atoms per square meter. So when a child stands up and spins around with their arms out, that's basically a square meter. not quite, right? But it's close to a square meter where they stood up waiting for the bus or something. So 50 atoms will cause irreversible heart damage. And a lot of this stuff will hang out close to the ground where the child is breathing, right? So it's even more insidious for the birds and insects. Children with over 11 atoms per kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. So 11 atoms. You can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. And the Becquerel is the deep pulse of energy from each atom every second. And it might do that long past the human experience, right? And if it does, then it's going to be... So plutonium, let me go back to that for a second. The plutonium-239 with a 24,000-year half-life, it doesn't lose its energy in that 24,000 years. So what the industry likes to do is say, well, this natural isotope or this natural isotope is there for 1 million years before it decays, and it doesn't have any energy, right? So it's harmless. The long-lived isotopes are harmless because they don't have energy. But the curium, which is 240,000 years or so half-lives, and the plutonium, which is 24,000 year, 239 half-life, the curium-244, I think, is 250,000 years, which you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for the plutonium. It doesn't lose its energy. So, and they know what they're telling you is a lie. And that's the thing about this industry. It's got an endless herd of these zombies will lie for the nuclear industry. And so any of the companies that you see, the startups for fusion, startup for nuclear, the startup, anything to do with nuclear, the first thing they're going to have to do is go out and prove their allegiance to the nuclear industry by telling people it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine and climbing mountains, flying on airplanes. And then the real scumbags will get greedy and they'll see a lot of money and they'll find opportunities to get in the media and regurgitate those narratives. And these are the worst humans conceivable because you disarm the population and you deny the future population, the future species. And what about the 8 million species? When do we acknowledge that we're the stewards? Because they want you to think of Greenpeace as steward, but Greenpeace is the first one to block you when you mention Fukushima. Almost 18 million atoms a kilogram, a square meter. These are ridiculous numbers. Cleared at low-level contamination, probably more dangerous than single doses. Let me go back to that. Yeah. Cleared at low-level contamination, probably more dangerous than a single dose. Grasshoppers with deformed wings, gray eyes, not red. Birds with abnormal sperm, strange. Large tumor, strange. What tumor is not strange, I wonder? So my detractors, I always suggest you go down there and write on the bags, Dana's wrong. There's only 30 million of them. So if you go down there and write on those 30 million bags that I'm wrong, I'll retire. Until then, shut your pie holes, because I ain't going nowhere. Japan's prime minister to study setting up an alternative capital away from the nuclear wasteland known as Tokyo. And Japan unveils a plan to develop a massive government backup city 300 miles west of Tokyo. Why are you going to move the capital 300 miles west where there's less radiation, I wonder? And room for 200,000 staff. Maybe built at an airport. It's quite a statement, isn't it? Radioactive black substance found 230 kilometers from Fukushima seems to be everywhere. And these are very high numbers we're talking about. Exceptional numbers. Because it's fungus, right? And bacteria will aggregate radiation. So the worst thing you can eat is mushrooms, for instance, and berries. Tokyo, 230,000 atoms per square meter of cesium in an athletic field in Koto. 6 times as high as the limit set for radiation control zones. Well, like the control zones, if they set the control zones like it was pre-nuclear Fukushima, you would have to abandon Japan because everything would be a control zone, right? So they raised the limit to holy shit, what are you, idiot numbers? Because otherwise they have to abandon the country, see? Officials sharply raised the radiation levels for the victims to get iodine pills, because now they're only talking about iodine 131, by the way. For every iodine 131, there's 10 times more iodine 132, and 30 times more iodine 133, and 31 times more iodine 129 created. And they don't acknowledge any of that, right? But the iodine 132 and the iodine 133, you're talking about is 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of insects and animals and birds and all the species and all the humans than the incredibly effective iodine 131 is. The whole story is unconscionable, but the story is not that hard to learn, right? You know, if you come back to these shows, and where you watch a bunch of these shows, you watch a bunch of it even, you become quite articulate. Nobody's going to beat you in this conversation. There is nobody going to beat, like my regular, the people that are here regular, no one's going to beat them in a conversation. They can go in any nuclear university or nuclear classroom or nuclear student, and they can pound the shit out of these people with documentation. In fact, if you went into a nuclear school, university, first-year students for nuclear, I'd say 3/4 of them would quit, or go get another major rather than continue at nuclear if they knew the truth. The nuclear industry's entire legacy is predicated upon deceit, dishonesty, and deception on the highest levels too, right? They have Hollywood at their beck and call. They have all the governments at their beck, all the media at their beck and call. They have captured everything in increments over the last 80 years. And I do mean everything. And you can see, right, I got, 27 people on probably the most important topic in human history. Officials sharply raised radiation levels for residents to get iodine pills, 75 times higher than the shitheads the League of Nations recommend for children. Why? Nobody in their right mind would use United Nations subsidies. Really, nobody in their right mind would use them. They're always the worst humans imaginable. Is United Nations? It's every and there's around 500 subsidies of United Nations, right? I mean, just for the nuclear industry, they got International Atomic Energy Agency, they got IRPA, International Radiation Protection Agency, they got UNSCLEAR, United Nations. They got like 8 or 9 subsidy companies, and what they do is they'll all end up at symposiums at major meetings, and they'll all back each other's datas up, but they're all the same organization. But because they have all these important type names, they snatched all the best names. And then so people get lulled into this complacency. And the majority of Congress and senators and your government agents, leaders, really don't understand, really think it's like a banana, really think it's like potato chips. They have been bombarded by this World Nuclear Association massive lobbying efforts. Government session reveals 400,000 times normal radio. There's no normal, by the way. Xenon's a very short half-life. There shouldn't be any. It's not normal at all. 133 in Chiba. In North America, it was 450,000 times normal / detection levels. In Washington and Canada, United States, for instance. These are catastrophic numbers. You can't have that without similar numbers of around 100 other isotopes in the same sample. You just simply can't have it. They don't travel. Xenon doesn't go this way, curium doesn't go that way, and plutonium doesn't go just that way. They travel together symmetrically. Low doses radiation causes heart diseases and strokes. It causes heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. And so after every nuclear accident, the first thing they're looking for The first studies they're going to do is Down syndrome and autism, because pregnant women, right? And then they use that to quantify the entire population was exposed to significant doses. And there's money to be made, see? Right, they're vultures. Remember, these people are actually vultures. These are predators in every sense of the word. And they're much more criminal than any serial killer. These are the worst serial killers. These are extermination. Each of them are extermination machines. And they disarm the population by suggesting that it's innocuous and benign, that it's like sleeping next to somebody, flying on an airplane. And we've seen comparisons of 15 minutes in a kayak, for instance. At the nuclear meltdown, the homeless that are working there is the equivalent of 15 minutes being in a kayak. Like, these are monsters. And these monsters are at key positions at your cancer institutes, at the Mayo clinics, for instance, at all your universities are going to be stuffed with these monsters. Like, if you took... hang on a second. I got another way of telling it. Because any popular arguments, I've had to just put together folders, right? So that if I want to knock it out of the ballpark, then I have... I'll just take a few minutes for that to populate. I have a way of doing it, right? Oh my, oh my. Here we go. Oh, give me another second. How low doses of radiation causes heart diseases and strokes? Because most of the studies will only say cancer. I can show you just literally tens of thousands of studies that I already got of where they just only talk about cancer. And you'll see it, the whole study, like the word cancer might be there 2,000 times. Oh, okay. It's been a while since we've done this one. This is always entertaining. So most people think of a doctor as a holy man, right? Well, let's talk about professors. So there's not a lot of professors, right? When you do the numbers. Convicted of double murders is a ex-professor. Professor convicted of baby sex abuse. And there's a lot of these guys. South Korea professor convicted of faking a Yale degree. Liberty University professor charged with attempted murder. Former dental professor convicted of stealing associates' money. Nursing professor convicted of bank and wire fraud. Columbia professor convicted of attempted incest. Marietta professor convicted of a slew of child porn charges. University of Michigan opera professor, husband charged with sexual assault in Texas. Professor convicted on 26 fraud and public corruption charges involving the Blackfeet polka program. These were children, right? It's 27 felonies. A law professor convicted of assaulting a 70-year-old taxi driver. Morgan professor convicted of grant fraud. Convicted of child porn. Early childhood professor convicted of child porn. So imagine the students that these people are producing should all get their money back and have to go back and get their degree again with a real legitimate professor. Harvard professor convicted of defrauding couples. Did I screw up or something? Yeah. Professor convicted of assaulting 3 girls. Professor convicted of murdering ex-wife. And these are the people that are rolling out. These are nut jobs. And some of them just, they're so criminal that they end up doing stuff like this. But this is your typical professor. Now, they might be hunky-dory for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and then there's a major event with a nuclear industry, and their job is now to come out and protect the nuclear industry. And so these are serial killers waiting for their opportunity. K-State professor convicted of murder. Stanford professor convicted of tax evasion and theft. UCI professor convicted of setting fires. Maryland professor convicted of defrauding his students. Oakland professor found guilty of running a drug house. MIT professor convicted of staging a shooting and accused of forging part of dead son's will. Former professor convicted of embezzling $650,000 from student fund. Pittsburgh professor convicted in wife's cyanide killing. He put the cyanide in one of her yoga balls she uses for practicing yoga. Convicted former professor admits to abusing boys. Morgan State University professor convicted of fraud. Hong Kong professor, this one, convicted in yoga ball murders. He had been seen filling 2 yoga balls with gas, and they were found dead in their car, which had a deflated yoga ball in the trunk. So he filled the ball up, put it in the trunk with toxic gas, and then he knew the wife was going to, and the daughter was going to be in the car, and he got rid of them. Former Elon professor convicted on child pornography. I had so many of them we stopped covering for the most part. Professor convicted of scrawling polite graffiti on people's cars with a screwdriver. Using a screw, like, these people got the job because that's their personality. This is the people they want. They don't want them to go and do this, but they want them capable of this, right? Because they need them to be monsters on the drop of a hat. And the average, not all professors, but the majority of professors are monsters on the drop of a hat. It's unconscionable stuff you see. Sentenced to 4 years in prison for arms export. Convicted of vehicle manslaughter. Jewish professor convicted for marketing child porn, for goodness sakes. Convicted of faking vandalism. Convicted of first-degree murder. But you can't keep up with it. There's so many of them. And the same thing with doctors. Because a lot of doctors are rolled out to make the nuclear industry. You actually can't keep up with it, see? Doctor convicted patients over. Doctor convicted child abuse. Doctor convicted sexually assaulting 4 patients. Convicted of billing fraud. Botched surgery, gets life sentences. And so they got, just because people got a doctorate degree, see, the nuclear industry rolls out professors and doctors like they're toothpicks, right? And they're very disposable. The industry got it. For every good professor, there's 1,000 monsters. And the industry seeks these people out and puts them in key positions. And we know this because of the studies, right? Like, I got studies it'll leave you sleepless for days or weeks even. It'll leave you sleepless. If you go back and watch the Chernobyl anniversary this year, we still got to do a 3 Mile anniversary. Slipped past me this year for some reason. And if you go back and look at the Chernobyl, any of them really, you know, last year or the year before had 900 studies in it. Just click, 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 click for 3 hours. Blah, 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 blah. But it shows you these studies, right? If you go back to April 26th show, April 25th, we done it on the day before, on Chernobyl's anniversary for 2024, we had around 400 studies or something in that one, and all kinds of other stuff. But it shows you the facets of the academic, right? The scientists and professors will do all these studies, the doctors, scientists, and professors in the nuclear industry. There's got to be 10, 15 million of these people. And they're going to rush out and do studies, and all the countries are going to pay for these studies. The taxpayers are going to pay for it. Because the nuclear industry is completely anal about documenting every facet. And so they go out and they study like stuff that you can't possibly conceive. They're going to spend $1 million studying the radioactive fallout. And we're talking, for every nuclear accident, they're gonna probably do 7, 8, 9, 10,000 studies, and each one of them are going to be something different. That's how screwed up this industry actually is, and they know it. They got no illusions about it. It's horrifying when you see how this permeates into every facet of the biosphere and the ecosystem. 24,000 atoms per kilogram radioactive cesium in soil samples west of Tokyo, 250 kilometers from the nuclear disease factories. Strontium was found in 2,200 locations in Fukushima. That's 2011. And so when you get a nuclear meltdown, and Fukushima is the mother of all nuclear meltdowns, so to speak, strontium after 1,000 days is produced in a ratio of 100 to 1 cesium-137. 134s. So it's 100 to 1. And strontium 90 is what they're talking about here. And strontium 85s. This stuff is just, it's a bone seeker. Or a skeleton seeker. And I showed you studies on the dogs, how that plays out. So when, after 1,000 days, it's a 100 to 1 ratio. And that ratio is going to last for tens of thousands of days. Tens of thousands. So it's going to last hundreds and hundreds of years of that ratio, because you have a meltdown, but the curium, the nuclear meltdown itself, has some incredible, horrifying attributes, and they destroy everything with replicating cells. There's nothing out there with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it, because nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. And using a Geiger count on a fish, yeah, you might find radiation, but you're only going to find a fraction at best. If you find anything, then you should abandon it right away. Irreversible heart damage for children, 50 atoms per kilogram. But how can you avoid 50 atoms per kilogram? Because 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't perceive it or see it or smell it. You put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. How are you going to separate 50? It just simply can't be done, right? Children with 11 atoms per kilogram start to see heart problems. Okay, back to this is not a story we're covering tonight, it's this story, right? The International Atomic Energy Agency experts have confirmed that only tritium. So nothing that I showed you is real, because the International Atomic Energy Agency is not allowed to be held accountable. So none of this is real. The only thing real is that they say nothing is there, only tritium, and nothing got out until 2023. But that doesn't explain why they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, does it? I think this is MIT. Yeah, this is MIT. So, when Fukushima happened, Yale, Stanford, Oxford, MIT, Berkeley, there's quite a few of them, within a few weeks came out with presentations on Fukushima. All of them cut your throat. What I done was I challenged every one of those presentations. And I challenged it extensively, too. Well, I went way down the rabbit hole and clearly showed that these are monsters, these professors, these academics, these university deans. These are real-life monsters. I'm going to play this clip. I got to put the headphones on. I'll adjust it.
I'd like to welcome our own students from nuclear science and engineering and other members of the community here at MIT, and also visitors.
So his own students from their own university. Let me start that off again. This is really important.
I'd like to welcome our own students from nuclear science and engineering.
From nuclear science and engineering. Students, not academics, but students. Not alumni that graduated and has come back to help them, but students.
And other members of the community here at MIT, and also visitors, I think, from elsewhere.
Now, all of these people are at the universities. It's a seated audience, right?
And shortly after 3:30, there was a hydrogen explosion in the building of Reactor 1. So when of that explosion, not long after, the evacuation zone was extended to 20 kilometers radius. On Monday at 11 a.m., so this is now on the third day, there was a hydrogen explosion of building of Reactor 3. In the meantime...
Now, the official story is none of this happened.
Reactor 2 fuel rods, what is reported to have been fully uncovered.
This is MIT, right? Who's promoted nuclear for over 90 years. So what it means, when you are exposed to fuel rods, the zirconium cladding, as soon as it's exposed to air, starts heating up to around 1800 degrees. It'll burn at. And then the pellets of uranium plutonium inside of the coating, because you're in rods, you put pellets in the rods, and then they're coated with zirconium. So zirconium is what they used to use in the old camera, the big flashes in the 30s and 40s and that. And they had a little hammer, right, would hit the glass and break the glass, and then the zirconium would be exposed to air and it would flash, right? It'd be a flash fire. So all those people that were getting their pictures taken were getting incredible cancers from that, by the way. And the land was contaminated, the houses. So any of the houses and old buildings and houses from the 1910, 1920, 1930 were public, where these cameras were used. You'd never want to go there. These are toxic nuclear wastelands. So he just admitted that the fuel pool rods were completely exposed, uncovered, which meant they melted down. That's how that works.
And they quite soon began to inject seawater, borated seawater.
Now, you already showed you Reactor 3 detonating. You didn't inject anything. You had a tsunami ran through the friggin' site. You had reactors throwing fuel rods all over the sites. You're not going on that site. He knows that. Everybody in the nuclear industry knew that was
water. At 6:14 a.m. on Tuesday, that's today, of course, but since they're 13 hours ahead of us, that was quite a while ago now, there was a third explosion. This was in Reactor 2. This was inside, as far as we can tell, inside or near the containment. And another worry that arose was on that same day was that the Reactor 4 building, Reactor 4 is adjacent to Reactor 3, was observed to be aflame. And
and it looks like there's somebody up there stood on the roof, right? These people are so evil.
This was sort of at the same time that radiation levels were...
You can't do it, right? It's a nuclear...
...increasing further. There was a lot of suspicion that this fire was in the spent fuel pool.
So this is the pictures that they rolled out, right? The fuel pools are very deep pools. Right? You can't get in the building to take a picture.
However, since that time, TEPCO has said that there was an oil leak in a water pump and that was what was the cause of the fire.
So he said the fire at Reactor 4, there was no fire, and that it was the well... Okay, so I got another clip I'm going to play. This was Bouchard, I think his name is. Now, he was the second in command for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in the United States. And Jasko was in charge at that time, right? He was late for Congress, so I chopped this video up because he had the same reply for every question, but his job was there to inform Congress. So Congress was asking all these questions, and Bouchard, anyway, we'll get his name here in a second.
Couldn't speculate on that. What we believe is a significant amount of fuel damage in the three operating reactors, units 1, 2, and 3, which were operating at the time of the earthquake. And then because of the spent fuel problems that are in unit 4 of that reactor facility.
Of that facility. So he said 3 reactors and 4 cores. Okay, so this is Stanford University. Just a little clip.
Stanford University.
We're very, very lucky today to have 2 real experts on this topic. The first is Matthew Wald from the New York Times.
Well, why would you have Matthew Wald from the New York Times at Stanford, who has a nuclear department, massive nuclear department? Why would you bring in Matthew Wald, who's not a nuclear expert at all? Who now works for the nuclear industry, by the way.
Although it's a mess to try to cope with a meltdown or 3 meltdowns in the spent fuel pool right after a tsunami.
So you got 3 meltdowns and the fuel pools. But the International Atomic Energy Agency today started July the 13th, or June the 13th, 2023. And then on August the 24th claimed that was their first release, that nothing has ever been released. So how do we get rid of all of this? That doesn't exist anymore. How did we get to this stage where the International Atomic Energy Agency says, well, to hell with it, let's cut everybody's throat, and then there's nobody to complain later. Let's kill all the species. Let's let all the species. Let's not try to have a future. Excuse me. Okay, let's get back on the story here. Well, we're almost there, aren't we? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 left to go, and then we're going to do pictures and videos of this last week. Give you an update on everything. After conducting an independent on-site analysis, the International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed that tritium is far below the operational limits of 1,500 atoms per kilogram. And so they're claiming this is their 6th batch, or 5th batch. Yeah, this is number 6. First off, the International Atomic Energy Agency shouldn't exist. And don't forget this story here from last week. As for the second claim, it should be noticed that the ALPS treated water, which doesn't exist, you can't treat it, meets the standards defined. And we explained a lot of that in the first 36 minutes. International Commission on Radiological Protection, and as far as the contents of the liquids are the same, there is no legal basis to distinguish the liquid produced by a nuclear accident from that produced in normal operation of a nuclear power plant. Like, this is the most ludicrous assertion conceivable. Okay, so we're going to play this video. I'm going to do pictures. I'll just play this for quick. This is Wednesday. So, lights, the hangers, mini hacks are on sale. We got more of these beautiful cut-off blades on sale. And a riveter. And then we got bifocal glasses, actually, safety glasses. More knee pads. And 10 more of them for 15 bucks. I think we're done really good. Okay, so we got 10 of them cut-off blades. And the other ones are better, but they were pretty cheap, so we grabbed them too. They were on sale, so the other set I got is just mangled. That's only 3 weeks ago we picked them up. So those blades, they're really good blades. Those really thin blades, they're amazing actually. And a riveting gun, I don't have a riveting gun. So I got that for, I don't know, I think it was $20 on sale, so I went and done it. And these are like reading glasses, safety goggles, so you can see a bit better. Because it's so hard to see with safety glasses, right? And they were on sale for $10 or something. And so I bought extra rivets because you can get them packs for $1. So I grabbed a couple of packs. These were $60-something. These are the hangers. So I needed more hangers. And I needed these pieces too, right? With that one there and that one there and the bolts. They're hardened steel. And I needed these hangers. So I was welding Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, and a little bit today. I'll show you that coming up. So we needed another set of lights, and paid almost $50 for them. So tomorrow, when I get back from the city, I got to put those lights on. I got to rewire the truck because I'm having a problem with the lights on the truck. So I got to rewire the lights that are coming back to the trailers. And that's a mini hacksaw, 6-inch one. And I got that for $6 or something. But I really needed the lights. And then I also picked up the wrong oil. You were getting two 4.7 liter jugs. I'm going to bring that back tomorrow. I never took it out of the truck. When I went to take it out, I seen the 5W20. I need 5W30. I got to do an oil change. And so you're getting two. These are fully synthetic for $20 each. So $40, you get 2 oil changes almost, right? I went for it and said, "The hell with it! I'm doing it." Hang on here. So this is Thursday. I had to grind everything down and start re-welding everything. And that little welder is fantastic. The trick with it is you got to put the ground right alongside the weld. You got to want to be like that close to the weld. Because it's just a 60, 70 amp. That's okay though. And so that was we needed those nuts, we needed the bolts, and we needed the pieces that are in the box right there. And we needed 2 more of them. The wider ones, right? So I had to grind all that away and start again. And this is inside. Is it? No, this is underneath. This is the outside still. So I'm just going to whiz through all of this stuff. Slowly but surely, we started getting everything to come together. So Friday, this was Thursday's evening. I had most of the welds on the outside finish. I still had to get inside the trailer. So you can see I took all the planks off the trailer. And I got the trailer up on the wheel blocks. So it's up nice and high for me. And get underneath it. And so I started getting paint on it a little bit too. I'll put some more paint on it today. So that was this one is the way. I had to cut that piece out. Get a piece in behind it. Grind everything off. And which I've done, right? So there's 4 of those pieces, so I chopped all 4 of them off with a single blade, eh? With a single one of those small blades. You can see cut all of them off with a single $2 blade. Unbelievable, isn't it? That was pretty cool. Oh my goodness. Because I have to do inside, remember, because that goes up on the inside. Because that axle was 72 inches, the one I took off. Okay. So that took an hour this morning to knock that old piece out because the other one was welded in, right? The other one was welded in, so I knocked it out and put the new one in. That's the finished job there. So now that can't collapse and take my leg off. And more of that stuff, yeah, hang on. So that wood is really rotten, eh? A lot of that's really, I don't care, I'll put it back. I put it back together, right? I'm not going to lose no sleep over it. So that was this morning. I put it back together, then pressure washed it, which took a couple of hours because you had to do, because that wood wouldn't hold any paint. It was pretty rough, right? So I got everything, all the welding's done. And this morning, everything was finished. Well, this morning all I had to do was weld this piece on, right? Had to power wash the deck. And then get some paint on it. So now we got paint on it. And now I got to go into the city tomorrow and get wheel wells. And then come back out, weld the wheel wells onto it. And I'm good to go. I'll put the Zodiac on it tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow night we'll have pictures of the Zodiac on it. And the motors and the cabin on it. And then we're supposed to get rain the next day, I think, heavy rains. But then the day after, then we should be in business. And we got to start doing some research with that. You can see my welds are getting better. But, you know, it's a $100 welder. And so all I done was just grind everything off I didn't like and do it again and again until I got good welds. Like, the outside is easier to get good welds than it was the inside. Once I took all the plates off, now the deck is nailed down, right? So at some point I'll replace the deck. And I got to replace the wood underneath it. It's not a hard job. I got all the tools to do it. And we sold 6 of these T-shirts. Thank you, everybody. Awesome. We sold 6 of them the weekend. You got to like that. Off to a good start. So the Fisher story is nothing got out of these buildings. And this is insanity. So the International Atomic Energy Agency is the #1 enemy of humanity, along with the United Nations, right? This is absolutely unconscionable that they're saying nothing got out of these buildings. This is untenable. We cannot, under any circumstances, let that slide. We have to challenge that. And so once I put the, I've done that yesterday rather. Once we put I put the trailer up on the ramps, it was a lot easier. Everything went smooth after that. But I mean, I was busted up because I was underneath it. I had my head crooked over. I had a headache like an hour before I done the show tonight. I still had a headache. And it finally went away, right? So thank goodness. It's not completely gone, but it's gone enough to do a show. So that was really rough. I didn't think I was going to get a show in tonight. And couldn't do one last night. I was just burnt out. I probably could have done one, I suppose, but I just didn't have it in me. And I didn't have it in me. I used up everything on Thursday. Went to city, came back out and welded everything up on Thursday. Like, wish I was a bit younger, I tell you what. I kicked some serious ass. Okay. Let's close the poll down, I suppose. Should do that. We can do that. Should the International Atomic Energy Agency be charged with crimes against humanity for hiding Fukushima's massive nuclear emissions? And it should be, you only got 100 digits, right? So it should be a massive nuclear radioactive fallout or something. You can only put 100 caricatures there, right? So I put emissions because everybody basically knows. All right, that's the show. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. looks good. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Even if I don't feel like it, I'll be back tomorrow night. I'll feel like it because tomorrow I'm going to have the defenders, the trailer fenders installed. That's the end of it. I'm going to have the boat on the deck. I'm going to have the motors on the boat. I'm going to have the gas tank filled up. I want to get busy. I want to go all the way up until fall. I got so much work to do, though, all the other stuff I got going on. It's a little overwhelming, eh? But thank goodness we got all that equipment bought. And that was the best thing we could have done, right? Thank goodness we done that. That's all I can say. Thank goodness for everybody that donated on top of that. Alrighty, we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night, a great day tomorrow. I'm going to play the other song now, because I screwed up.
Oh, this world is at a tremble with its strength and mighty power. They're sending up to heaven to get the brimstone fire. Take warning, my dear brother, be careful how you plan. You're working with the power of God's own holy hand. Atomic power was given by the mighty hand of God. Atomic power, it was given by the mighty hand of God.